Welcome back, traders and investors, to Benzinga's Pre-Market Prep, brought to you by MarketFi. I'm your co-host, Joel Alconin, along with Brianna Valesky, and we have Rick Ackerman on the line. He's a technical forecaster and author of Rick's Picks, technical forecaster extraordinaire. Rick, how you doing today?
Good, Joel. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so how did you get interested in technical analysis? Is this something that, you just picked up along the way, or do you have someone that you like to pattern your style after?
Well, I needed something to keep me honest. I've been bearish on the market since maybe 1960, 68, and the technical forecast gives me a way of getting around my own weakness.
Hey, wow, that's good. I've been bearish, not quite as long as that, and the technicals do keep me out a little bit of trouble. But what are your go-to technical styles? Are you like a 50-day, 200-day moving average guy? Are you daily high and low? Stochastic? There's so many things out there. What do you like to use?
Well, I've tried them all, and my charts are very simple. I don't use oscillators or even volume. It's strictly price-based, and I start with an ABCD pattern: AB rally, BC correction, CD follow-through, and it turns out when you look at the market with that any kind of discipline for long enough, it starts to make sense.
Okay, so you're trading what you're looking at today. And you're gonna let's first talk about the E-mini S&Ps, and it's like that break on Tuesday never happened. We've come right back up. We're forming a major wall of resistance up here. It's kind of just driving me crazy because it waiting for a breakout above 2134. You have a lot of congestion above that, several highs in the 2120 handle, but really won't break down. What's your forecast for the S&Ps? What are you looking at for today, and what are you looking at longer term?
I've got a cluster of very interesting, very important rally targets in the E-mini S&P. The specific number is 2138. There's another one at 2138.50. One is a very significant target, major, long time in coming, and the other even more so. So it's very tempting for me to lay out some shorts near that level. The closest we've been is 2134, but I want to go home short today just to test the water. And although I never go into it with the idea that I'm going to nail the exact top of a bear market, of a bull market that's been chugging along for more than 6 years, it's always fun to try.
Okay. So we pick a level today where you want to, short on strength. Will you pick one where you're short on weakness, or do you just I'm going home short at the close no matter where we close?
Well, I'll always try to short into strength or buy on weakness, but the E-minis have been kind of titillating me they've been bobbing around just shy of that 2138 target. They've been within 4 points of it. But today, if we don't quite get there, I'm just not going to pass up the opportunity. I'll short one way or the other before the close.
Okay, and then you obviously layer. You said you can't pick the top of the top of a bull market or the bottom of the bear market, so you may layer into things. You might put one contract on now, a couple more contracts another level. Is that the way you do it, or you'll try it with this one? If it doesn't work, you'll stop out. You'll try it again.
I'll try to find a target, an intraday target on the lesser charts, and short there. I'm not going to try to layer in. But also, I have a somewhat odd situation here because I've got an equally compelling target in the Dow and the diamonds that would be somewhat higher, around 18,426. So if that happens, the E-mini S&Ps will be maybe 2150 or 2155. They'll be a bit above this target that I'm using today.
What are your targets based on?
Well, I use these ABCD patterns, and
Okay.
it turns out there's a lot of information in the BC piece of it, the correction. But bottom line is that when you have good, strong bull markets, they beget relatively weak corrections that do not reach their target. So you can usually get a little bit ahead of the moves.
All right, so you are crazy bullish on the T-bond futures and think the nasty correction from the highs is over. Are you just a non-believer here in the Fed that its interest rates are going up? What's your take?
Right.
Why are you crazy bullish on T-bond futures?
Yeah, I'm about as strident a non-believer in the Fed as you could have. I understand that the Fed has its effect on the markets, Fed policy, but I don't think that any significant interest rate can possibly be affected. We keep talking about the recovery, but the recovery is so narrow. To me, just to exaggerate a little bit, the entire U.S. economic recovery right now is in auto leases and essentially higher prices in some sectors of the housing market. So I've never really believed the recovery story, and I've got statistics that back me up on that say that this is the weakest recovery of the post-war period. So I don't think that any tightening of significance will happen, and I also believe that there's a huge risk in just the Fed saving face with maybe 10 or 20 basis points. So that means that the entire unwind in bonds since late January is based on a wrong assumption. I think the move has been corrective, and I see another huge leg up in the bonds. The problem is that it could only happen if we have very significant weakness in the economy, but that's what I think we're going to get.
Yeah, you're not alone in that camp. We've had J.C. Peretz on yesterday. There's just, thanks rates are actually going lower. And Dennis and I talk about it, quite a bit. Is this really the kind of recovery that you want to bump up interest rates? Because, what would happen if you do take interest rates up and these punk numbers even become worse? Then what's the Fed going to do? Go back into another round of QE? That would just send the wrong signals. So you're also bullish the dollar here, extremely bullish on the U.S. dollar. The dollar index has turned higher. What do you look at? Do you look at what do you trade as far as that? Do you trade an ETF or what do you like to trade?
Trade DXY, the dollar index, and sometimes short the currencies.
Okay.
The dollar, I think it's been predictable for decades that if the economy ever ran into very serious trouble, the locus of it would be the dollar. Because even though the Fed can influence short-term rates, the currency markets are really much too big, even for the central banks acting together to much effect. So when they get a mind to go higher or lower on market forces, there's really nothing the central bank can do. So I think we're seeing a strengthening in the dollar that will undo everything that the Fed has attempted to do, which mainly is to stave off deflation. So I've been a very ardent deflationist for more or less forever, and I think the deflationary forces are there incipiently in the derivatives bubble. We've got a quadrillion-dollar financial edifice there, and you let a little bit of the air out of it, there's no way to get it pumped up again. And, of course, within that quadrillion-dollar market, there are a lot of positions that are implicitly short the dollar. So I think eventually we could get a short squeeze on the dollar, but we're seeing the very beginning of that right now. And dollar index currently trading 97. I think it's going to 120.
Wow, you are bullish. And just going back to the S&Ps a little bit, you gave me those targets, and those targets are based on the June contract. Are you just doing projections on the actual S&P futures charts, or do you use the cash, or how do you do it? Because with the contracts rolling every couple months, I use the straightforward ADS on one platform. What do you use?
Well, I'm focused mainly on the E-mini S&P June contract. I think that target will be hit long before we go into the September contract. But I'll just roll over if it hasn't. If we don't get there by the time the June expires. So mainly it's possible to hit the swings, highs and lows in the E-mini S&Ps within 2 or 3 ticks, which is what I usually try to do.
Wow. Individual stocks, any of them you follow or like to keep an eye on?
I follow a group that I loosely refer to as the lunatic stocks.
Good.
Uh,
All right.
the ones that can really move in a day, like Netflix, Apple, Google, Chipotle, Priceline, Amazon, Tesla, and so on. In fact, I offer on Fridays what I call a jackpot bet that's based on buying options that expire that day that can be very volatile. So you combine that with these high beta stocks, and sometimes you get amazing leverage. But I think that there's been pretty strong leadership from these stocks. Apple is my bellwether, being that it's the most valuable stock in the world, and I tend to track it pretty closely from day to day in the newsletter. I love to be short right now the housing stocks, and I'm pretty sure the airline stocks have topped.
All right. So could you give us some of those jackpot picks for today? I mean, obviously you're talking about the weekly options, right? And just trying to find something a little out of the money and then playing it and have it come your way. Can you share any of those with us?
Well, exactly. I used in Netflix a 624.96 correction target. If it goes any lower, which it did within the last 10 seconds, I think we'll get a tradable bottom in Netflix at 623.97. And let's see, in Apple,
So a buy,
it's
you're looking like, so you might go out and look at some 630s or 635s in Netflix, the weekly, something like that?
I look for options that could conceivably finish at or perhaps in the money if you get a sharp
Oh.
reversal that day. But I look for bargains on the opening bar because frequently the market makers will try to fade market orders on the opening. I was a market maker myself on the Pacific Exchange floor for a dozen years, and that's how we do it. There's a lot of latitude to let's say, rig prices on the opening bar.
When were you on the Picos?
I was there from 1978 to 1991 or so.
Oh, okay. All right. Did you know any Don Bright or Bob Bright? I think they're on there for a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they were two of them were very active, very successful, um, and they were what I would call rocket scientists.
Yeah, yeah. That's how Dennis and I, my co-host, cut our teeth in the markets was through Bright Trading. Just Apple. Just could you tell us about maybe your jackpot pick? What you're looking for in Apple today?
I love Apple. The story has been good, and even if the hardware story should turn sour for whatever reason, battery problems in their latest device, they've got whole other things in the works, and it's really hard to put the knock on Apple if you just take Apple Pay into account. The idea that at some point in time they could have a little piece of virtually every little transaction that happens on Earth. But that said, I've been looking for 143 and change as a potentially very important top in Apple, and it's been having its troubles. It hasn't been able to go the little extra distance between the existing high, which was up around 130. What was it? 133, 134.
Well, the
But
all-time high, interestingly, was made on the day that they had the good earnings at 134.54. They took it down over 10 points, 123.36. If you're talking about the recent high that we hit at the end of last week, that was 132.97.
yeah, I was having trouble finding a right bar with my TradeStation app, but I see 134.54,
Mm-hmm.
and my bull market target for the stock is about 10 points higher.
Okay, that's interesting. Anything else for Rick's jackpot picks today? Been noticing Tesla here. Just was real quiet. I noticed on Tuesday when the market was selling off that just kind of didn't budge here. And now I'm looking on my trade station, and it's one of the few stocks I have in the green here. What are you thinking? Maybe the 250 calls in this for potential trade today?
I can give you a number that you could bet the farm on. It's
Oh,
250, 253.03. The current price is 251.96. So we've got $1.07 upside. That 253 and change is what I call a hidden pivot. And if Tesla makes any progress above it, it's going to exactly 255.64. The stock was a buy this morning on a pullback to 250.42, and I see the actual low on the opening bar was within 16 cents of that. Actually, I try to get a little closer than that, but it was what I call a mechanical buy. That's a technique that I teach in a course that I give monthly. But these are what I call hidden pivot numbers, and the exact price action at 250.42 over the last day or two absolutely confirms the 255.64 rally target. Only problem is, we get a dead zone for 4 hours today, and if you don't get the move in the first 30 minutes, um, it's questionable whether we'll get there at all in the space of this session.
I think you're even more precise on your levels than I am. I mean, you're very confident when you're giving those levels. You're giving them to the exact penny, and in this decimal laden market, that's very impressive. Just any final tips for investors here, or just for the trading day in the S&Ps? Any relevant levels? One thing I like to keep an eye on is how the market trades in relation to the pre-market trading. I think you have some big participants up there. For example, 2112, Rush, the morning low, pre market low. A lot of times you get follow through if you could take out the pre market low, and same on the upside. Any key levels in the S&P futures for our listeners today?
Well, 2138 in the E-mini S&Ps, but currently trading 2114. I don't think we're going to get there.
Nope.
There was a good story in a journal yesterday about the dead zone, how pretty much everything gets traded in the first 15 to 30 minutes of the day, and from that point, all the pros go out to lunch till the final 30 minutes of the day. So if we didn't get it, right off the bat, I think we're going to noodle around here for most of the day.
Yeah, that's a great point. Rick Ackerman, technical forecaster and authors of Rick's Picks. Rick, I've learned a lot from you today, and we certainly hope we can have you back on the show soon.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me on, and I certainly hope we can get together again sometime.
All right. Thanks, Rick. Go get 'em.